GRMS. GMRS? GRMS? Germaeus. GRMS radios. I feel really bad for GRMS radio users that simply want a good radio to communicate on. Because the problem I've found with GRMS, which was my gateway drug to ham radio, is you're very limited on quality. For the most part, you just have a ton of direct conversion or so-called system on chip radios to choose from, and then you have Ocean. That's basically your two choices. I think Alinco makes a really weird GRMS radio. ICOM makes a very strange FRS radio that's like $200. It looks like a little Motorola FRS, which I guess is technically GRMS, but it has all the restrictions of an FRS radio. That's basically it. And then when it comes to quality, all GRMS radio users are being cheated, because a lot of people get into GRMS because they just simply want to pick up a radio and they want to communicate. And then some people, like myself, are absolutely obsessed with finding the best of the best. But most GRMS radio users aren't going to have a VNA. I was trying to think of remember what a VNA means. Video Network Analyzer, something like that. Virtual Network Analyzer. I don't know. I was trying to think of a pun and I failed. A lot of GRMS radios might own one of these. I bought one of these when I was strictly using GMRS. These are great if you want to just make sure that your antenna is not crap, but they are not ideal for tuning antennas or saying why your antenna is crap. That just simply tells you your antenna's crap. It just gives you SWR. And it tells you forward and return wattage, but essentially this is just part of SWR. And does some other fancy things, like if you want to hold it horizontal, this gives you a little bar graph that rises and falls. I would still recommend buying one of these. They're cheap, but you should really have a VNA. As complex as they are, it's worth learning how they work. So we'll start with, just so I can throw these off to the side real quick, the antennas that your radio likely came with. These look familiar at all? Stop using them. Just stop it. Get some help from one of these. Well, specifically this antenna. We'll get to that. This comes with a lot of Baofangs, specifically the newer Baofangs. Even though it came with the GRMS radio, it is actually a ham antenna. This also came with maybe one of my GRMS radios. It also came with my ham radios, because you know what? It's the same antenna. It's just a ham antenna being sold with GRMS radios. And then, wait a minute. This might have actually come with a ham radio. I don't know. This, I know for a fact, came with my Baofeng UV5G, and it is a ham antenna. Even though it's SMA male, it is resonant at about 420 megahertz. So, that brings us to really 3 possible choices. I do have some Abri tactical whip antennas. I have 3 different lengths, and I know for a fact I bought one of them as GRMS, but I just checked all of them, and none of them are resonant on GRMS. So I'm not including any of the Abri tactical whips, because I have a 18-inch, a 42-inch, and a 48-inch, and none of them are resonant on GRMS. So I don't know what's going on with that. So I'll go with the first antenna that I've bought for GRMS. My first ever GRMS radio was the Radioddity GM30. Yeah, 30, because I have a GM15 Pro. Couldn't remember which was which. So the GM30, I had no idea what I was buying. So I'm like, you know what? Radioddity recommends this antenna. This is supposed to be a GRMS antenna. And it looks long, so I guess longer antenna means better, right? Not always. Ideally, you want a quarter wavelength. Some people will say half wavelength, but you can take a piece of wire that is exactly 1/4 wavelength and 1 millimeter thick, and you can just stick it in this SMA connector. Of course, I say that and now it's not going to do it. You can stick it in there, and that will work as an antenna, as long as it's exactly 1/4 wavelength of 68 centimeters or whatever GMRS is. So quarter wavelength is pretty foolproof, and it's very effective. If you look at propagation patterns, it's very consistent compared to like 3/4 wavelength. All right, so we are going down to 460 something. GMRS is between 462 and 468. I'd like to go closer to 462, whatever my VNA likes to land on. 463.2. Now this is sold for the GM15. And if you notice, the closer focus. Ooh, that's so much better than my other videos. Do maximum focus. Most macro focus. You'll see that my flags are on 463.2, and none of the SWR dips are anywhere near that. Purple is SWR, yellow is log mag, green is my Smith chart. With my Smith charts, this 4 center boxes, I like to call it the window. The flag should be somewhere in there. And the blue is the resistance of the antenna itself, the active resistance. Or, I'm coming short for words. Reactance. But our resistance is 405 ohms, surprisingly. Our SWR is not great at all, 9.9. And I realized that this antenna was crap as a young GMRS operator about 2 years ago when I bought one of these, and it showed that my SWR was about 9, and I immediately stopped using it because I was told that an SWR of 2.0 or higher will destroy your radio. In all reality, it'll just make your radio tune down how much wattage. But then that antenna's crap. I've already done a video on this one for my handmade antennas. This is the Smiley GMRS antenna. It's supposed to be quarter wavelength when it's down, but it's a little bit too long. And when it's fully extended, it is a loaded 5/8 wavelength, and it's actually a really good antenna at loaded 5/8 wavelength. It is suspiciously the same length as the Nagoya if you subtract the loading element. So that leads me to suspect that maybe the Nagoya is either half wave, I think it's more half wave, or 5/8 wavelength. So you can look up that antenna. I've also already gone over this one, but because this is the antenna that I recommend, no questions asked, we'll go over it real quick. So I'll bring out my little jank adapter. If you are a GMRS radio operator, just buy the 771G. Do not buy the 771. That is a ham. That is a 70 centimeter antenna. You want the G model, which means it is resonant for GMRS. And it's not that bad of an antenna. Like, it's the bullet shape's nice. It's kind of a thick antenna, but it's still not really getting in the way. And it's giving you the best reception possible that you can get for an HT antenna besides going dipole. Let's see, 166.05. Macro mode. Oh, that is not macro, that is infinite. A plastic fantastic $50 50mm lens. All right, that's the it's a 1.8. It's the widest lens I got right now. Aperture. So giving it a light grip with my antenna facing my computer monitor and a whole bunch of other metal stuff. We're getting an SWR of about 2.3. Give it the death grip. Give the VNA or your radio the most amount of ground plane, we're getting SW about 2.3. Now this is about to go upside down because to my left side, there's a monitor, there's a light, there's the arm for my microphone boom. To my right side, it's open air. So with the light grip, we're getting SW about 2.35. And death grip, touching the antenna. Very awkward. I don't know. Earlier it was shown about lesson 2. Because the problem with any HT or handy-talkie or handheld transceiver is they're very inconsistent, as you just saw there. Because your antenna is always going to be in a different location. You're going to be holding it differently. You're going to be pointing in a different direction. Your receiving operator might be a little challenged in the head and holding the radio sideways instead of straight up and down. So your antenna is going to be in a different orientation than theirs, and you're going to get a little bit of transmission loss. There's just so many variables with HTs. So a lot of people say that your SWR should be 1.5 or less. Yes, that's true if you're building an HF radio that's going to be mounted to your house and you're never going to touch it. It should be below 1.5, but for an HT, I consider 2 to 3 SWR acceptable. Obviously, we want to aim closest to 1.0 as possible, 1 to 1, but realistically, your radio is still going to work with a higher SWR. And I'm not saying that SWR doesn't matter, I'm just saying it still will work. So like my first antenna that I went out on my way to buy, this had that SWR of 9.0 and it still worked. It just didn't work at 40 miles like I wanted it to. When I switched to Nagoya 771 with a no frills Radiodity GM15, I was hitting repeaters about 40 to 50 miles away when I was on the side of a mountain, and that repeater was on top of a mountain. Because in all reality, as long as you have clear line of sight on Earth, your radios are going to connect even with a 5-watt radio. You don't need to go out of your way looking for that unicorn of a 10-watt handheld radio. 5 watts will do it. As long as it's making 5 watts consistently, you're good to go. Yeah, that's it. GMRS antennas.